In 2013, the clouds of war returned. A minor conflict in the Middle East spiraled out of control, unprecedented in its rapid escalation. It was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The cause of such conflict became insignificant, the parties immaterial, and in the end, they all lost. The world was burned in atomic fire, bathed in radiation and biochemicals previously unknown, and the biome forever altered. But this was not the end of humanity's story, but the beginning of a new and bloody chapter. As the bombs began to fall in distant Novosibirsk, the Special Committee Rapid Response Group, or OSKOM, evacuated much of the population into the local metro network, shielding them from the initial blasts. However, the metro tunnels proved too shallow to protect their inhabitants from radioactive fallout, a problem exacerbated by the enemy's use of a cobalt bomb, a weapon designed to poison the land with its overwhelming radiation. The people were forced into a dependency on a chemical known as radioprotector, an anti-radiation medicine, more commonly known as green stuff, for their very survival. Recognizing the scarcity of the green stuff and the potential panic, OSKOM established a ruling committee headed by Lieutenant General Anatoly Vinogradov to oversee the strict rationing of food and green stuff in order to keep the population alive. To this end, several smaller and more specialized departments were introduced, the medical department being responsible for the health and medical affairs throughout the various stations, operating clinics and distributing the green stuff to those most in need. The maintenance department was responsible for maintaining the functionality of each station, clearing out infestations of mutated worms, and working to repair a transport vehicle for the eventual evacuation to cleaner pastures. Often working in conjunction with the special department to utilize conscripted labor from so-called dirty stations to clear railway tracks, accepting that 90% of those conscripted would perish on each mission. The special department also had the notable distinction of being OSKOM's secret police unit, interrogating, executing, or simply terrifying into submission any that would threaten the committee's rule. By the second decade of their leadership, the situation was growing tense. Supplies of food and green stuff were both beginning to run out, and attempts to identify a clean zone using a local SATCOM center failed to yield usable results. Rations for dirty stations were halved, while those living in the so-called clean stations continued to live in relative comfort. And not long thereafter, the committee began to confiscate all excess reserves of the green stuff. The lack of any explanation or clear progress towards evacuation bred paranoia, with many coming to believe that they would simply be left to die. A fear that was roused still further when it was discovered committee leadership would be the first to be evacuated. The dirty stations rose in anger and fear, rioting against OSKOM, these riots soon growing and escalating into a full-blown rebellion. In this conflict, OSKOM's foot soldiers were better armed, trained, and equipped than their rebellious foes, equipped with pre-war military hardware, body armor, and advanced post-war products such as flamethrowers and even railway tanks. They were, however, grossly outnumbered and facing an enemy with nothing left to lose, and as they gunned down countless waves of rioters, OSKOM's defensive lines were steadily being pushed back. OSKOM, seeking to supplant their lost numbers, conscripted what remained of their civilian population. Men, women, and children were put into service to fend off the rebels, concentrating their forces at Siberskaya and Krasny Prospect. There, in spite of their tenacious defense, in spite of their firepower and their mass recruitment, the rioters breached the station. Overwhelmed, a final desperate action was ordered. The blast doors were sealed, and chlorine gas was unleashed. It killed indiscriminately, decimating the rioters and those loyal to OSKOM alike. What remained of the organization's high command stole away with what little green stuff they could. And in those final moments, Lieutenant General Vinogradov ordered the last of his forces to destroy the committee's train in a suicidal act of vengeance. Thereafter, the war ground to an abrupt halt. The metro's population, having been thoroughly decimated, succumbed to the gas, to the radiation, and the once populous stations began to break down, becoming the breeding grounds of mutant beasts. The last soldiers of OSKOM, Colonel Klebnikov and his son, survived from some time thereafter, scavenging amidst the ruined stations. Yet, even with a population reduced to a mere 2 persons, their supplies dwindled. And so the Colonel would go on one last mission, going to the SATCOM Center. In the end, after so much death at doing what OSKOM had originally sought to do, finding a place free from war, unravaged by radiation, a place where they may once more live upon the surface.